I go on and one and all to the Literary Baptists. I'm Lee, as always, and I am joined by Nick, and Zach has returned. Prodigal.
Hey.
He's gone there and back again, and we're so glad to have him.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. I made so many excuses for you while you were gone.
I heard them all. They were all
Are we
100%
gonna make an
accurate.
excuse for Maddie now?
We should make an excuse for Maddie.
She's
Excuse for Maddie.
she's doing things.
She's helping Eowyn make better stew. That's what she said. She is no man.
True.
So we're doing another bit of miscellany tonight. I'm gonna turn it over to Nick here because he has a proposal to make and for us to mull over tonight. And if it passes muster here, then it will be enacted. No,
Yes, enacted for everyone. This
For
applies to everyone throughout the world.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've been thinking of is the literary canon, the works that we consider to be great, the works that we talk about, the works that are talked about in schools, that are taught in schools, in colleges. And I think that the literary canon for the West needs to be reevaluated, particularly in the period since 1850. A lot of people are saying the exact same thing I am right now, and they're saying it for a different reason. And that'll be my first point, is that they're wrong. It does need to be reevaluated, but not for the reasons they think. So I have 8 points. A few of them are just some genres and things that I think are underrepresented. A few of them are points that I think should apply to everything in the canon. But we can just kind of talk through them one by one. And I will start with the one that I just kind of referenced. But I think that a work gains its status through merit, not through the characteristics of the author. So we don't need to artificially prop up and put in, oh, we need to have more women authors. Oh, we need to have more authors of color. That's probably the proper way to say it, I think. We don't need
for now until it changes, but
I know. I'm sorry to everyone living in 2040 that listens to this. I'm shamed for that language.
do
but
the work.
I'm trying, except I'm not really. So I think it's important that the works that we talk about putting into the canon, I think it's important that they earn that based on the merit of the work itself, not based on the characteristics of the author, especially the artificial characteristics of the author, like race or stuff like that. Race is probably the big one. So
gender identity or other new inventive categories to subdivide ourselves into.
Right. And once again, for all the people listening in 2040, I'm sorry.
It sounds like you're just trying to erase individuality. Why don't you want me to exist?
Yeah, why
so
are you
sorry.
against their existence?
I'm sorry. But I think that that's really important. And that is the
Better.
way that a lot of people who are saying like, oh, we need to reevaluate the canon. We need to add, make sure that it's, and like, basically there are a lot of people who are, they probably don't use the word quotas, but they basically want a quota system within the canon. And so they want us to read more books that are by authors who fit those artificial characteristics. Or, I mean, like women is a real characteristic that has meaning, but it doesn't really necessarily need to be propped up.
An author is an author, whether it's a man or a woman or what
Yeah.
color that person's skin is. An author should just be an author at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think that
women aren't real though.
Merit.
They're like
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, it's kind of hard to
drones.
define.
Yeah.
Start a new conspiracy theory. Women are government drones. You heard it here first.
The real
It's
war
true.
on women is actually the war on the government.
That's right.
Is there one?
So we all agree with this one?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We agree with this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So we agree that women drones created by the government should be allowed to
Yeah.
to create
Now,
literary works, but
That's
don't
what
need to
Chat
put 'em in.
GPT is, right?
Yeah. Why are we discriminating against robots?
Now, one thing is in this, and I actually think others of your points flesh this out, but I could see people coming at this one and saying, well, who defines what merit is? You
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
But I think the rest of your points actually do a good job showing what merits inclusion.
Yes, to some extent. One of the things with assessing an aesthetic or something with aesthetic value like a work of literature is that it's not like you can create a checklist. If you
Mhm.
create a checklist, you can create some work that fits all of the checklist, and it
Mhm.
might not be great.
And it ceases to be good art.
Yeah, it doesn't. You can't do it based on checklist.
It's
It
like
has to
20th
be
century music,
Yeah.
atonal music or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Philip Glass is really mad at you right now.
I don't care. Cope and seethe.
Yeah.
That's right. You heard it here first. Cope and seethe, Philip
Cope and
Glass.
seethe. Or what's that work of music that's just silence for like 5 minutes or something?
I don't know.
Oh,
Like John
yeah.
Cage or something. I forget how long it is.
Just
It's just silence. Like
Yeah.
the musicians are supposed to be up on stage and just do nothing for
It's
however
sitting at
long it is.
attention, ready to strike, but they
Um,
don't for like 5
yeah.
to 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's it may fit some people's definition, but that to me is outside. Anyway, trying to decide. My second of these is that true creativity is not the haphazard abandonment of established norms, but working well within them. And I think that John Cage thing is a good example of that. Like, instead of just talking about music or words on literature, just talking out all the norms, all of everything that we've established up to this point, and doing something completely creative. It's silence. It's nothing. That's not really creativity. Creativity is doing something great within the norms that have already been built and structured. So I think that's one of them.
So
I might
so
push
even a
back on that one a
sitcom-
little bit.
Even a sitcom that's a show about nothing can still be something.
Okay. I want to hear your pushback other than the Seinfeld one. We'll get to humor.
Just creativity. Obviously in a really, really broad framework, everything already exists, right? Nothing new under the sun, that kind of a thing. So we're not coming up with brand new things really ever. So within that framework, I would agree with you. Within, like, again, because I know music, going back to music, if we just stayed within the norms, there would be so many kinds of music that you don't have.
Yeah, and that's why I said haphazard abandonment. I think you can suspend it at least partially. Like, you can have a mystery novel that ends with, the author, or not the author, but the like the not the protagonist. What's the word I'm looking for here?
Yeah, like
the speaker, the
Yeah.
first person
The
is
narrator.
the killer. The narrator, that's the word I'm looking for. The narrator is the killer. You can have that.
Yeah.
And I can think of an example of that. And that goes outside of the norms, but that it's just one thing. It's no ending, It's like, okay, why would somebody want that? Like you have to have some of the things. You can abandon artistically, you can abandon like one or two and still work within the foundational thing and see if it works. But if you just abandon everything, I feel like it becomes something new, and it almost never works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it can, but I think at this point we're past that. You need to.
I would think that something like that just abandons all structure and everything that helps you create, nobody would want to read it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that John Cage thing is considered great, and that is, you know,
that's stupid.
Or there's an example. So I still occasionally read Poetry Magazine, and I'll never forget a couple years ago there was a well-known poet submitted 4 poems, and I'm like, okay, all right. So I turned to them, and they were collages, they were images. There weren't even any words. It was just images, and I'm like, this isn't a poem. You could say that about other poems actually made out of words in Poetry Magazine that aren't poems, but that especially, that's visual art. That is not, like, categorically, that is not poetry.
Yeah.
That's like saying silence is sound.
It's a visual art.
That is inspired by poetry.
Yeah.
But I just looked it up. It's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It's called 4:33, and it's just silence. That is not a musical composition.
Yeah, silence is not
music. And I think that is what I'm kind of trying to address is in modernism, there's this idea that, we should just kind of trash things and do whatever we want. And I trash like the conventions. And I think there's this idea like that greatness comes from usurping the inventions and breaking free from these artificial restrictions. But I think the greatest things come from working within them in a great way.
And instead, the real rebels go out there and they make like those YouTube playlists that say a playlist that makes you feel like an 18th century villain, and it's full of just like the most like pump you up classical music you can find. It's real. I actually listen to it relatively often. It's so good.
Do you feel like a villain?
Every day.
Yes. All right. I've got a third thing. We should celebrate sin.
Now hold on. You've gone too far.
That could not have come at a better time.
I know. I went out of order, but I had to. So that is actually my third one. Is the celebration of sin it's not great. I don't know why we consider it to be great. And even like books there's a book that I read, Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. It's terrible. It's stupid. And it's basically just this woman who's like selfish, and she's upset with her marriage and her life in a small town. And so she turns to sinful things. She turns to, there's nothing worth celebrating really in that novel. Yeah. Yes, she is very empowered. There's nothing to celebrate in that work. I don't know why it's considered one of the greatest novels ever. It doesn't deserve that place because it's just a celebration of sin. And I think that since
Same
1850,
with Lolita too.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I can guess that that's the case.
It's gross.
So I think that despite the world probably saying who cares about sin or whatever, but I think we should stand and just say no, that if it's a celebration of sin, doesn't need to be in the canon, doesn't deserve its place.
Yeah.
Well, even if you didn't call it sin, there are standards of morality.
Yeah.
Even in secular society.
By what standard?
They know that what this person is doing in this book is immoral. So It's the same point. Like immorality should not be celebrated either. Like that's
Yeah, we need to have heroes in stories again. It seems like every hero is an anti-hero anymore.
yeah.
The explosion of grimdark fantasy really has made that a big selling point to the culture. You know, part of the reason people loved Game of Thrones so much as a show is that there are no good guys in it, or the one good guy died in the first season, dies within the first novel, and everybody else is just trash.
Yeah.
That's not something to be celebrated. It's not great art. And it doesn't even really represent reality either.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now,
can you imagine if it did? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Good gravy.
Yeah. One clarification I want to make on this one is that just because I don't think that we should avoid things that portray sin,
Right.
just celebrate them.
Yeah.
Right.
And
without sin, it's hard to have a plot to a novel.
Yeah, I mean, everything was great.
Something's got to go wrong. Yeah. Everything was great and it just got better.
But portrayal of sin is okay, but when it's celebrated, that's when we have to be like, this isn't great. So that's my third one.
I agree.
We ready for my fourth one?
Let's do it.
Let's
get into some controversy.
You want to get into controversy?
No, I'm just kidding. You can say them in whatever order you want. I'm just kidding. I'm just being silly.
All right. This one I'm going to have to grab a book, but I'll go ahead and start it, and you guys can talk for a second while I try to find the passage that I need to justify this. Plot is more important than character. Talk about it.
I agree.
Just talk.
Talk about it. It's important.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Zach?
You mean the plot is more important than what do you mean by character? Like, are you talking about?
Okay,
I guess the
so
characters
one of the
in the story, is that what you mean? Like building, developing character? What do you?
Yes. Yeah. Think about it. Like, have you ever watched those movies where there's no plot? It's just a character who just happens to be like, it's him going to the store. It's him sitting in a waiting room doing something, and there's some music behind it and everything.
Trying to go get some soup, and the guy won't sell him soup.
And it's like, what a great like character sketch and stuff. It's like
waiting for Godot.
Yeah, it's just nothing. I am not alone in thinking that plot is more important than character. But let's read from Aristotle, who says the same thing.
Breaking out the big boys.
Breaking out the big boy. The most important of the six, and these are the things within drama that are important. There's spectacle, character, fable. The most important of the six is the combination of the incidents of the story. The story is most important. And it says, I'm skipping a little bit around, but it says character gives us qualities, but it is in our actions, what we do, that we are happy, or the reverse. In a play, accordingly, they do not act in order to portray the characters. They include the characters for the sake of the action. And then it also says, besides this, a tragedy is impossible without action, but there may be one without character. I'm not really sure how that happens, but I think a lot today people tend to focus on, I really like this character. And I think that that's valuable, talking about the characters and what happens to them and how they do things. But I think that there's like this psychologization.
Yeah, sure.
Did I say it?
Let's do new words.
I can make up words. It's fine. But it's more about psychology and things like that than it is about the story, the plot. And I don't think that is the right way to look at things. And so I'm going to mention here a book that it did have a plot, I guess. I read a book, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. and I still don't remember what the plot was. There was really not much to it. It was one of the worst books I've ever read. It was awful. I don't understand.
It wasn't a
how...
good portrait then.
It was not, no. But the whole point was supposed to be portraying character, but there was I don't still understand what happened. It was poorly written. I don't understand the appeal of James Joyce, and I'm going to go out and say that I have no desire to read Ulysses, and I probably never will, and it seems stupid.
So you're not going to celebrate Bloomsday then?
Take that, James Joyce.
Called out. I hope he sees this.
I hope so too. Yeah, whatever. I hope so too.
Tell him to seethe and cope as well. Now, are you going to read Portrait of the Artist as a Young Dog by Dylan Thomas?
Dogs are great. That one can have plot.
It could.
Going around sniffing dogs things.
Yeah. Dogs have lots of motivation.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I've read enough contemporary short stories in which nothing actually happens and the people don't actually change.
So there's no character development and no plot.
Yeah. So one of them was Excellent. Raymond Carver, What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. And if you wanted to write an essay about love, just write an essay. Because it was just constant ping-ponging back and forth between 4 different characters. And it was just, that conversation barely would have been compelling to have had it in person. It's infinitely less compelling to then read it on paper.
What a review.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Wow.
When you're talking about this, I'm thinking of TV shows, right? How there are different storylines going on at the same time. Mm-hmm. And when they switch viewpoints, you're like, I don't really care about this storyline. I want to go back to that other one that's really doing something,
That was me with Rings of Power, except every storyline stunk.
Okay.
Except for Elrond and Durin. That was good.
Mm-hmm. But you wanted it to stay there, right?
I did.
You didn't want it to, because
I could have watched
things you're like,
if the whole show was him and Durin hanging out, I would have watched that.
You did watch it as it is.
Yeah, I did watch it as it is.
So I do that in books too, though. It changes to this character's point of view, and I'm just like, okay, I got to read through this to get to the next fun thing that I want to read. This is just boring. I don't like this character's story. But I guess I don't know if that really is relevant, but now you know how I feel.
We know how you feel now. Yeah.
Some characters are irrelevant, okay? They suck.
While we're on this one, someone who did prioritize plot over character is J.R.R. Tolkien.
Woohoo!
I don't know
the professor himself.
There's definitely character development and things like that, and the characters have things to them, but to some extent, the characters matter a lot less than the plot. Mm-hmm. The plot, if you were to describe Lord of the Rings to someone, you would describe the plot. There are other books that you would describe the character. Mm-hmm. Like A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man.
Yeah. Or even Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
Which actually is a good book. And there's definitely, there's a plot there, but really the main story is when the heck are they going to get together? And that's not really a plot.
Yeah. Jane Austen probably does character better than anyone else that I've read, but she doesn't ignore plot. There is, and there are usually some side stories that are the sister that's running off with a soldier or whatever. There's usually something that's adding a little bit more to the story as well. All right, my next one. Seriousness is not a virtue. humor can and should be considered among the greatest literature. We see it with Aristophanes, with Jonathan Swift, but humor is never really given as much love in the modern literary canon. Maddie mentioned P.G. Wodehouse as someone who deserves that spot. I want to add Evelyn Waugh, early Evelyn Waugh. The late one's not really funny, but
yeah,
early Evelyn Waugh is
not known for being
hilarious.
funny.
Yeah, his first few, not like Black Mischief and Scoop and Handful of Dust. Some of those early ones, those are hilarious and deserve to be included among this. One of the things, like when I was in high school, we tended to read like serious novels all the time. And I had one teacher who made us read Kurt Vonnegut, and we enjoyed it. It was funny. And we talked about things. I don't agree with Kurt Vonnegut on anything. I think he's a little bit crass sometimes, but he is funny. And so I appreciate literature with humor. I think it's important. That's something how we learn too. I think today, one of the ways we learn and we can convince people of different positions is not through like debates and long treatises. It's like memes. That's how people are convinced of different positions. I know that it's not the best thing in the world, that that our attention span is so short that an image and like constant barrage of images that push one position is what convinces people of something, but it does. And I think humor is a good way to show the weaknesses in certain like views, philosophical views. And I think
we've lost satire altogether.
Yeah, and we can enjoy it. It's enjoyable too. Like it pokes fun. You can attack really well with it, but it's fun. We all love it.
That's what I was going to ask. Basically, what Lisa, do you think that there's just a lack of satire? Is that because I mean humor is out there? Usually, there's some witty characters in the books you like or something like that. It's not focused on humor as much. It's focused on something else, but there will be funny moments or little things here and there. But do you think it's more like we need more satire books?
I would say that. And I think the Evelyn Waugh or even the Wodehouse, I think that those are good examples. Like they may not be straight up satires, in the sense that they're not like A Modest Proposal, but they just kind of satirize a certain type of person or a certain thought or a certain like a certain philosophy. Like they'll push things in a different way, and you can see the foolishness in a character, something like that. I don't necessarily mean like, oh, you need to just be laughing out loud, although with both of those examples I do kind of laugh a little bit out loud.
Yeah,
they're both hilarious.
It shouldn't take it out of the running if it makes you laugh out loud.
No, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important way to attack the things that are hard to discuss seriously. So this back when Borat, the movie Borat came out, I remember a review I read of Borat, the movie, and I remember it saying something about how the movie was so like it brought racism. I mean, the point of Borat is like against xenophobia and racism. It brought it into the light. It brought that whole thing into the light so that we could just laugh at it. Whereas most people are afraid to talk about racism because they're afraid of saying something wrong and then, you can't say that.
They got
like,
me.
But Borat, the character, said things that like everything he said is cancelable. Like that, but that's the point, is that it's a satire on that thing. And it was funny, you know. So, and I think that's something funny that movies and TV have actually done better than literature in the past, what, 50, 60 years, is humor and satire
and cartoons too. You know, you can't talk about that without talking about South Park, which has biting social commentary in every episode, alongside poop jokes.
Yeah. Or King of the Hill is another one. I mean,
oh yeah, King of the Hill.
I lived in Texas for 2 years, and a lot of that's true. It's a true story. But you're right. All right, are we ready to move on?
Yep, I'm with you on it.
Okay. My next few have to do with some genres that are underappreciated. So the first of these set is realism is not a virtue. Fantasy and science fiction have been and are immensely powerful tools in examining the big questions of the West, particularly technology, which is a huge deal right now.
Yep.
Not all fantasy and science fiction is great, but I do think that they deserve their place among the canon. And sometimes people tend to not want to include them because it's like young adult literature. It's like for teenage boys. And I think
tell that to Stanislaus Lem.
Someone who says that clearly has never read science fiction, because
absolutely
it deals with the actual questions of things that we are actually experiencing. I mean, the AI revolution that's just like happened in the past, like, what, 2 months, it feels like.
It's been coming for a long time.
It's been coming for a long time, but it's, you know, I mean, we basically have had it happen overnight.
And you can tell nobody's read Asimov.
Yeah.
Right.
And these questions have been dealt with in science fiction. We can see like the negative effects and understand those things a little bit better if we have read science fiction, if we have experienced that, if that's been part of our imagination, where, you know, you see these people who are just like super optimist about technology, and to go against what you just said, Lee, I think about Asimov's Foundation series. That's like the most hopeful thing. Like everything is beautiful and wonderful with technology. They've you know, learned the future, and I don't know, maybe I read it differently than it was intended.
But it's really more about his like rules of robotics and like the rules that you should place on an AI in order to make sure it doesn't destroy humanity. And those are things that nobody's considered with any of the AI stuff that's happening right now.
And there are
I disagree with Asimov as far as like the basis of the Foundation series, but but those rules
I'm a non-hopeful technology. A pessimist, techno-pessimist. Is that a new word that I made up?
That's a cousin to a Luddite.
Well, I'm not I'm not avoiding it. I'll use.
No, that's why tools. I said cousin.
Yeah, it's a cousin. I use
Luddite
them,
is your weirder
complain.
cousin.
Yeah.
Or your maybe creepy uncle.
So I think, and all of us enjoy fantasy and science fiction. And obviously, you know, we've talked about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. They've used those to discuss and explore some of the great questions of the West.
But they've been placed in their own literary ghetto of genre fiction. And I don't think that's fair.
No, it's not. There's some people that have kind of transcended a little bit, like Ray Bradbury and
Neil Gaiman,
like George Orwell, I guess. Yeah. I mean, you can kind of convince
1984 was science fiction until technology surpassed what he described.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can include some of those things, and like there are elements, but for the most part, I think that they need to they need to have more respect.
Mhm.
I don't enjoy reading. I've read 3 Philip K. Dick novels. He's not a very good writer, but his ideas, what he deals with, are great. And so I think maybe he doesn't necessarily deserve a place in there, but he's a good example of someone who's dealing with big questions and dealing with them in a creative way, just maybe not a good writer.
Yeah.
So
Frank Herbert should be in there. Stanislav Lem should be in there. The guy who did Solaris, which became that horrible, horrible movie. Those are all guys that are really, philosophically interesting and are tackling big questions within their various, universes that they made.
Yeah.
And some of those things, some of those big themes, you do have to kind of separate it from not only our times, but perhaps even our planet to get a good look at it.
Yeah. Look at Star Trek.
Yeah.
I mean, just talk about, groundbreaking and what it
Which I like to call space
covers,
communism.
Yeah. Basically.
There science fiction has also tackled that issue of transhumanism, which, is getting more and more of a hot topic. Altered Carbon by, is that Richard K. Morgan, I think his name is. That book is phenomenal. Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card also talks about people that are, and actually in both cases, the Roman Catholics forbid their members to upload their consciousness to the cloud so it can be re-downloaded into a new body later. That's actually a common theme between both of those books.
Interesting.
If I had the option, I wouldn't do that either, but I'm not a Roman Catholic either.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah. One and done.
Yeah, just let me die. I'm good. I don't need a computer version of me later.
That's because you guys understand the significance of the passage of time.
Oh,
that's so true. Gosh, yeah, you really cut to the core of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You know the plot of Altered Carbon? Don't watch it on Netflix, but so there's this guy who he gets brought back. His consciousness was uploaded into the cloud, and they re-download him into a new body. And he's brought back specifically to investigate the murder of a man. So the guy who was murdered hired him to come solve his murder. But that guy, his consciousness was also uploaded to the cloud. And so he was downloaded into a new body. But he's like, I got to figure out who killed my last body. and the guy is in this brand new body dealing with like the effects of like different trauma effects on that body, as well as his own mind now reconnecting with this different body he wasn't born into, trying to solve the murder of a guy who actually is still living and never saw who killed him. It's a fascinating book, and it definitely explores that transhumanism theme in a pretty powerful way.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
Altered Carbon.
If like, do they just have an infinite number of bodies, or are they just like killing people so that the people can have their bodies?
Well, there
is that part of the question?
There are not infinite bodies, but there are some institutions have bodies on standby. But what's against the law is to clone your own body, leave it like frozen, and download your consciousness into the same cloned body again, which is what this guy who got murdered did. He had clones upon clones in storage. So he was going to live forever in the same body. And they call them meths, short for Methuselahs.
I'll choose a different body.
Yeah.
I'll take the new one.
Yeah.
Guy must have been really happy with his own body.
Definitely. The guy was that character was a real narcissist.
He doesn't have like the body dysmorphia or anything like that.
Definitely not. He had his body all worked out.
That'd be an interesting way in which to deal with the whole trans thing.
Yeah. Yes, it would.
Can I
actually change your own body?
Yeah.
Can I promote a series?
Sure.
It's like I guess it's science fiction. It's kind of futuristic, post-apocalyptic kind of a thing, you know? The Silo series. Have you heard of that?
Hugh Howey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
It's really good. You should check it out, Nick.
It's really good.
Really, it's been a long time since I've read it, but that was really good, and it deals with a lot of big themes, I would say. Like,
yeah, they live in a silo but underground, and there's all these layers to it. It's kind of like what was the one the movie that was about a train, and there were like all the different levels of society were in the train.
Was that Snowpiercer or something?
Snowpiercer, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like Snowpiercer, but instead of a train, it's a silo underground instead of above ground.
Interesting.
It's
really
fascinating.
good. Really good.
I think the first one's called Dust. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah.
Wow, if you told me that there's a series called Silo and the first one's called Dust, to be like, wow, is this just a story about like farmers or something? Is these some like Amish romances or something?
Yes, that's what it is.
I'm in.
Ezekiel and Dorcas. When are they going to get together?
When are they not?
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-oh.
Only after they're married.
Yeah. All right. I'm ready. Are you guys ready for the next one?
Oh, I'm so ready.
Okay. The next one, this one I have not talked about too much. It is that the mystery genre, like whodunits and stuff, which is one of the things that's on our reading challenge.
The reading list.
They need more respect.
Yes.
And my friend, who's dead, and he's my friend despite being a papist, G.K. Chesterton. I'll say it. I don't care. He said this. There is, however, another good work that is done by detective stories. While it is the constant tendency of old Adam to rebel against so universal and automatic a thing as civilization, to preach departure and rebellion, the romance of police activity keeps in some sense before the mind the fact that civilization itself is the most sensational of departures and the most romantic of rebellions. And so
wow,
this is in a thing called A Defense of Detective Stories. And the point of it is detective stories show how things really should be, in a way. I mean, yes, they show sin and they show the effects, but they show a way in which humans actually can deal with things, and they have an ending, and they have the good guys winning. I actually recommend that whole essay. It's worth reading. A Defense of Detective Stories. And
he would know as a practitioner of detective fiction.
He wrote the Father Brown stories,
which are great on both page and screen. Better on the page though, but as everything else.
But I mean, Dorothy Sayers, Agatha Christie. I've said it before, but I think women write the best detective fiction. I don't know how or why, if there's any good reason why, but it just happens that way.
They come up with all the best scenarios of what could have happened.
Yeah.
It's because they're the government and they know all the secrets.
That's right.
Yes. That makes sense, actually. Yeah, the drones.
Yeah.
But I think they deserve more credit. They deal with crime, they deal with sin, they deal with civilization. And if you disagree with me, read Chesterton and you can argue with him.
Yeah. And you know, they're focused on figuring things out instead of, you know, letting things sit and just,
Mhm.
talking about them or whatever, or therapying your way through it. Like, no, they actually get things done.
Yeah. Clues, things like that.
Yeah. Evidence.
Evidence. I love evidence. My last thing.
Okay.
My favorite thing, man, some flipping evidence. Nothing gets you quite like evidence does.
I mean, I do like it when when you feel like, okay, this is correct.
I love
And
that moment in a whodunit when the final turn is happening, and in the mind of the detective they've got it all figured out, and you've kind of got it figured out, but you might not have it all figured out.
yes,
And then you get the little speech there at the end, where they lay it out, and like, oh, so good. Like, you just feel that like tide turn. It's so
yes,
satisfying.
yeah, like Poirot's gathering everybody into a room. You're like,
Yep.
oh, something's going down.
It is
He doesn't
on
do
my
this for no
tongue.
reason. People don't all assemble into one
Yep.
room for no reason. That's
Yep.
something's happening.
Yeah. We're gonna listen to the man with the mustaches.
He does always say mustaches.
He does.
The last on my list, which makes 8 items, is the retrieval of the Northern European. So this kind of fits outside of my 1850 on thing, and this is more about medieval. But I think Tolkien, and to a lesser extent, like C.S. Lewis, have shown us that the Northern European, British, German, Scandinavian, medieval poetry, and all of that, I think that deserves to have a higher place than it does. I think Beowulf should stand with
The Wasteland.
Dante or something. Yeah, well, yeah. With modern stuff, yes, I think that's fine. But even with the things that we consider like, oh yeah, that's great, and the Southern European or the French stuff, I think the Northern Europeans have earned their place at that. And I want to clarify that when we talk about the Western canon, it really is just Europe and America, and to some extent Australia and New Zealand, and like Canada, but it is kind of it's not a worldwide thing. Like, none of us read much Chinese literature. None of us read much African literature.
The Chinese are elbowing into the sci-fi world, though.
Yeah, I'm
the three body
open
problem.
to
have you
kind of
heard
merging
of that,
the
Zach?
canons. Three body problem.
Yeah, it's actually it's a series, but the first book is called The Three Body Problem, and it's actually a pretty celebrated series. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation. Cixin Liu, I think, Cixinliu. So that was originally published in China, was translated, and then has been spread across the West.
So
I haven't read
had
it,
to
but-
look this up before I said something, but one of the main Wikipedia, who I'm representing on my shirt right now, even though I kind of don't care for Wikipedia as much now.
Sponsored by Wikipedia.
You're a walking contradiction.
There's the official government supervisory organ for Protestantism in the People's Republic of China is called the Three Self Patriotic Movement. Is that related? The Three Self and the three body?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Three
related.
self in reference to the Trinity.
It has to be.
I hope not. I don't know. Is it? That's a weird way of saying it.
It has to be.
Now no, it's self-governance, self-support, and self-propagation.
Oh.
So it's self-governance. It like that when missionaries start in a new place, the local people govern it, The local people
Oh.
support it,
Okay.
and they are the ones who are doing the missionary work.
Yeah.
You don't allow foreigners to help. Not great. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, I think to some extent it's good, but just kind of seems like a way for the Chinese government to control everything.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah, I mean it is. That's what it
Mao
is.
would be proud.
Yeah. But my point on this one was that I'm open to the world coming into the Western canon and kind of merging them, but I don't think it has happened yet. We don't tend to read those books. They don't tend to influence us in any kind of way like the works of Shakespeare do.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to combining the canons and learning from them. It's just I don't think that that's happened.
You basically have to be like a medieval scholar to read stuff like the Kalevala, and stuff like that. Pretty much.
It's just a matter of translation. Once things get translated and you get notes, that's what makes it easy and accessible to people. I think for ancient histories, I love the landmark ancient histories. Robert Strassler is the editor of this series, and I have almost all of them. I love them so much. They're full of maps, and they provide the context so that you can understand Thucydides or Herodotus or Xenophon. You can understand them in a way that if you were just reading it, you might not get it, especially since there's so many cities involved and places. When you see them on a map, you're like, oh, that's kind of far away, or oh, that's basically a suburb. And I think that helps a ton. So I think we need that in Northern European, but I do think that it is influencing our culture more and more, the Northern European, via Tolkien and through some other means. A lot of our culture is very connected to Scandinavian culture at this point. They've become basically English speaking countries, and they'd probably be like, oh no, we still speak Swedish. And it's like, yeah, I know, but y'all know English too. And I think we need to include some of that into what we deal with, because we're dealing with those people. You think about, like, I know that this is kind of a dumb example, but Minecraft, it's a Swedish game. And that's like the biggest game of the past 20 years, probably. Yep. We have actors and actresses that are from Sweden and Denmark and stuff, and they're big names.
One of my favorite bands is Norwegian.
Yeah.
Kings of Convenience.
Is it metal?
No, I wish. No, it's they're like a 2-man folk band.
Oh, well, sure.
And but they sing in English.
Oh,
so,
surprise.
There you go. They're great. Kings of Convenience. They're coming to Chicago in the fall, and I kind of want to go. They never come to the U.S.
Well, you're going to go to Chicago, though?
Yeah, that's the only downside.
More like Kings of Inconvenience.
Yeah, it sounds inconvenient. Well, I think we need to include them more. That is 8 items.
What do you think? One thing on that. So I don't know. We've talked about it a little bit, but it seems like people who want to argue for going deeper into, especially like Scandinavian literature and stuff like that, they always get accused of being a racist.
Yeah,
I don't know what the deal is with that, but how would you counter that argument if somebody were to bring it to you?
I mean, to some extent, it is kind of true. There are a lot of connections between not on my end. Sorry, I should clarify. Not on my end. But it is true that a lot of people who do want to bring in Scandinavian and Northern European stuff, like people who are interested in like Scandinavian paganism, like Viking pagan stuff, like that's got a huge connection to white supremacy and that kind of stuff. So
Actual white
to some
supremacy,
extent,
like the KKK and stuff.
yeah, like real stuff, not what just
Real
whatever
race. Yeah.
Ibram X. Kendi decides to call white supremacists this week. But I do think that it has influences on our culture, and it has importance for our culture outside of that. But I do think that it does need to have a it can't just be that. We need to have the issue. We need to be able to deal with racism and things like that. And I think actually American literature would be a good antidote for that. But I think there are certain things that the Northern European provides, courage and certain virtues, and provides some context around our past. I mean, most people are still, American culture comes from the English, which is kind of a merger of, like Germanic. It's different Germanic and Norman influence, which is kind of Germanic as well. It's like
Normans.
Viking French.
Back when they were cool and did things.
Yeah. So I think it's important, but yes, I think that that's a valid concern, and one that can just be remedied by reading more stuff.
Yeah.
So don't just read Northern European, but add it.
Yeah. Because hidden in the subtext of that is, we're not about censoring books, and the way that you learn and how to argue against things that are wrong is you read. Sometimes you have to read the people you disagree with in order to understand how you disagree and how you would voice your disagreement with their point of view, worldview, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You should just read more.
Yeah, just read more. And also, racism is not a uniquely European institution. If it's really an institution.
Not in any way.
A trait,
institution.
I guess.
Yeah. It's just an institution that was perfected there.
It had more power at one point.
It had a lot of power.
But it's still it is almost universal. I think the nation that did the most to get rid of it is the one in which I am present right now. The United States is the one that first pushed against it the most. I know that kind of seems
it just went through the abolition went through legally earlier in the UK is all. But still
I think when you deal with those things, then you can deal with them in a stronger way than other places do, and you have it in your backyard.
It's hard to ignore.
Swedish people have only had to deal with racism more recently because it was just Swedish people. Oh yeah, the Danes. It's like, well, they're not that different from you. Sorry again. I know I'm offending every Swedish person. But
we don't come from a nation state, so it's a very different thing for us because we've been a melting pot since we began.
Yeah, but we've had to deal with it. We've actually had to do the work. As a nation.
Oh, I love it when a joke comes back around.
But we have. And so in some ways, it is, even though it's somewhat prominent in the United States, it's because there's actual opportunity. Whereas some places may not have that much opportunity for it. If you're in a city that is 99.5% Japanese, you could be the most racist person and it would never surface. And if you're a racist in America, it'll surface. I think. I don't know where you would live if it doesn't. But it would. We have the
Probably
opportunities
in your backyard.
For it. So, but it's
shows
bad.
in
We all
China.
agree it's bad. Yeah.
I mean,
if someone's around.
They make fun of Koreans and and literally legitimately hate the Japanese after World War II. So, but that's a hotbed of racism too, and there's not even that many other races to. I mean, the Uyghurs are a great example of just how deep and abiding the hatred there really is.
Yeah.
And that one's kind of got a religious element to it as
Mhm.
well. So because they're all
Yeah.
a lot of them are Muslims.
Yeah, but they will call them like half breeds because they are not Han Chinese, so they are dogs.
So I only had 8 things, and 8's not a really good number. I need 2 more at least.
You need one less.
I need
Just take
a
one
good
off.
number. No, I'm not going to do that.
It's perfect. You take one away.
I need 10. I need 2 more. Okay. I need 2 more items on my list, or maybe 4 more items, and we can have 12. But you
That'd be
know,
cool.
8's a weird number. 9's a weird number. 11's a weird number. I need 10 or 12. So give me 2 or 3, 2 or 4. I mean, more things to add to my list.
Brandon Sanderson should have his own
No,
category.
Brandon Sanderson is not getting one. Come on, we need to see the Canon spren around you.
That would be amazing.
Come on, Canon Spren.
Yes.
I still don't understand what those things were.
They're like fairies.
Okay, well,
I would want to have something specifically poetry related in there, maybe 1 or 2 things, because I think the canon. When we think of the Western canon, I think most of us are thinking about like the great novels, and maybe like the Divine Comedy or something. But poetry has been huge for and big in Western culture from the beginning. Some of the earliest, Beowulf, great example. One of the oldest extant literary manuscripts that's ever been found. And what is it? It's an epic poem. And a lot has been done to damage poetry, especially in the 20th century. And some of it's kind of piggybacking a bit off of your point about completely abandoning forms. But I think I would like to see more emphasis and welcome place in the canon for good poetry too, if people will write it. Because there wasn't that much. At least people that are being more creative with the language. I'm not so dogmatic about things like end rhyme, or things like that, or even following like having to follow a received form. Like if it's not a sonnet, it's nothing. Or terza rima or whatever. But something that has the hallmarks of poetry as it has been, rhythm and or rhyme. The best of Anglo-Saxon poetry was never intended to rhyme, but those lines gallop in a way that prose doesn't. It's part of the art.
what are some of the characteristics of poetry in, say, the 20th century, of good poetry, great poetry in the 20th century?
Part of it, there there are good poets who have in their poetry captured something of the time. So part of it, I think of Auden's poem "The Shield of Achilles," which is kind of a cheat because it's very formal verse, and it's based on a classical concept. But in that poem, have either of you ever read it? It's so affecting. It's really good. So it takes the myth of the shield that Achilles takes into battle, which we know he dies. And so it's his mom, it's Achilles' mom going to the armorer's shop and watching them make this ornately decorated shield, and it's all visions of the horrors of 20th century war or 20th century society, eventually affected by the war. It's really, really good. Like, talking about bombed out landscapes and gang violence and all sorts of stuff. So part of the beauty of that poem is the fact that he so well captures the dark side of his times, while doing it not only within a received form, but even using those Greek concepts that we see in so much poetry.
One of the things we spoke about this not too long ago, about 21st century, is that of the 21st century West, is that there isn't really a combined culture. There isn't, we don't all experience the same things. We don't all run in the same circles. There's not even a regional culture. There might be, there are tons of little subsets, little platoons that are just spread out everywhere into
across the internet,
like,
across the world.
The three of us are talking from different states.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't there's not just this unique like culture of the time. Not everybody's watching the same movies. I mean, the closest thing would have been like Endgame. I mean, I can't think of anything else that's like basically everybody saw that movie. But that you could definitely talk to a huge number of people who didn't see that and had no idea what you're talking about. So I wonder what that's going to do for the future, because I don't think that you can do the same thing that you can for 20th century as much for 21st century. There are a few things like COVID, it probably is a big one, that we all experienced and we all went through that. And it was pretty similar experience, even if we had different views of it. But like the left and right in America have different news cycle, like it's completely different. Like, you go on CNN or Not the Bee and they're completely different things that they're talking about. I mean, even I keep up with church news to some extent, like evangelical, but there's completely different stuff within Catholicism. We don't have like a combined culture in any kind of meaningful way anymore. So I wonder what do you guys think that
it's all
for?
It's all slipped into the tyranny of the self. So if you look at the most the most popular poetry today is stuff like Rupi Kaur and those like Instagram poets, which basically like they write a 6-word sentence, cut it into 2 lines, and it doesn't even resemble good prose, let alone poetry. But because it's all about the feels or the emotionalism or hyper interiority, that is what passes for poetic effect.
It reminds me of there's a building not too far from me. It's actually in Rogers, Arkansas, and it has just a huge mural on the side of a building, and this is what it actually says. Okay, it says, "We hold out our hearts for a new tomorrow. May the stupid fires of hate be healed by the cool water of kindness." I mean,
stupid fires.
You can, you can agree even with the sentiment to some extent.
It's just a laughable expression.
Well written. Like I was hoping, and maybe it is. Maybe it was written by a high school or something, won a contest. But every time I drive by that, I laugh a little bit because it's this is juvenile. Worthy of a mural. Yeah, it's juvenile. So I that actually kind of brings me to another thing and another question. This is a question I don't think I probably wouldn't answer yes to this question, but I want to see what you guys think. Should what we consider to be art or literature, should it be expanded to include some of the things that we see and experience and influence culture, such as memes or like TikTok videos, things like that? Like, should those be included, not necessarily in a canon, but should they be considered as a new genre that could constitute part of a future canon?
Yeah, like a canon of popular art or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, because
yeah,
you say yes.
I totally think so.
The
For the
meme
sake of
canon.
history, for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say that I've elevated memes to an art form. So
You really have. You're one of
You're
my
one of
favorites.
the best, Zach. You're one of the
Yes.
best.
You really are.
I'm so thankful.
Yes, you are.
You really are.
That's great. No,
but
but you see some videos and you're like, wow, they really went
Mhm.
really went to a lot of effort in this, and it's like, 10 seconds or something, but they're
Mhm.
really impressive editing and production skills like on
Yeah.
display. So I would say yes, in a very limited way.
Yeah.
I think someday there should be museums that show vines on like a kiosk in the middle of a hallway or something.
Well, there's like a TV channel or something that shows fail videos, nothing but fails. Like, and it's all like you can watch it. It's all
That's
the time.
awesome.
So there already is that sort of,
We need a museum of internet video. Has Vine, has YouTube, has
MySpace.
MySpace. Yeah. Yes. Did MySpace even have video at all?
Eventually, yeah.
Okay.
But it was killer for audio. So it's sort of like the move from radio to movies.
Yeah, you wanted to be on mute if you were snooping on some people's MySpace because music would
everything
just play.
It would. And every page had music. Yeah. No, that is so key to like internet culture history.
Yeah.
The movement from just audio to video.
And the kids today be like, MySpace? What's that? Who's Tom?
Yeah. You go to somebody's thing and it's like some Jack Johnson song would start playing. It's like, what is going on here?
Yep.
I don't want to listen to this.
You don't want to listen to Banana Pancakes on repeat?
He's great, man. Come on.
He's got the
I chose him
spirit.
because he's so specific to that time.
He really is. He really is.
So that's my list.
Better Together was his best album.
All of his, I like one of his songs, and it is any of them because they all sound the exact same.
You're so wrong.
That man's whole discography is the exact same song. He might have just had albums that are just one song on repeat because they all sound exactly the same.
Oh man, that's rough.
Man, that's rough.
Well, those are my ideas. I don't think that you guys have really given me two good ones, so maybe we'll cut out one of them.
Maybe we'll revisit the topic after we've had some time.
Maybe adding memes to it.
Yeah,
we do need a Hall of Fame of memes, I think.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be some sort of commemoration for this because it's too significant.
There's a website called Know Your Meme,
and
it's
a handy website.
It's a meme history, like how these memes came to be.
It really is.
Yep, it's great.
But they do influence people. They do. Like, people change. We hear it. We see it sometimes. People change their lives. They change their views on things because of memes.
I know my memes have changed my life. So.
Okay, but they change other people's lives too. Okay.
Memes made me a better man.
If it weren't for memes, I wouldn't be a meme lord today.
You're one of the best out there, so
I'd still be mediocre.
one of the best in the game.
I gave up vaping because of memes. Thanks,
I
Pepe.
started vaping because of memes.
Trying to do like basically what my boys on Sunday, the pictures, trying to do that with my hands here.
Oh, the AI hands. Well, I like your modest proposal. I think it's a good place to begin.
Thank you.
Thank you. We should do we'll do a refresher on this at some point and get it filled out to 12.
Yeah, because
8. Maddie will probably fill it the rest of the way out.
Yeah.
Hopefully she'll have some.
Yeah, I'm sure she will. And it won't just be we need more horse fiction in the canon. More horsies, please.
My daughter reads horse fiction.
We need more.
I think her name is Margaret Henry or something like that. There's a woman who writes
Henry?
who wrote. I mean, I think she's long dead, but she wrote a bunch of novels about horses for kids.
Wow.
We need more books on husbandry.
Yeah. That's some good fiction right there.
Agreed.
Well, gents, we'll wrap it up there. I appreciate the modest proposal. I think this is the start of something very good. And so until next time, may Monway keep you in the one, and peace out.